Ever wondered why panfish are more active during the fall season? Well, it's all about the changes in water temperature. As the air turns crisp and leaves begin to fall, the water cools down, triggering a shift in panfish behavior. These fish, which include species like bluegill, crappie, and sunfish, begin to leave their shallow summer haunts in search of warmer, deeper waters. Now, you might be thinking, that's all well and good, but how does that help me catch more fish? Well, that's where understanding their fall behavior becomes key. As panfish transition to deeper water, they tend to congregate around submerged structures. Think brush piles, fallen logs, aquatic vegetation, or even steep drop-offs. These structures provide cover and attract smaller prey, making them the perfect dining spots for our finned friends. So when you're out on the water this fall, keep an eye out for these underwater hotspots. But how, you might ask, do you find these submerged structures? That's where a handy piece of technology comes in, the depth finder. This device uses sonar to map the underwater terrain, helping you locate those prime fishing spots that are invisible from the surface. But remember, just as trees lose their leaves in fall, aquatic vegetation also dies back. So, while weed beds might be a go-to in the summer, don't be surprised if your favorite spot seems a little less popular when the temperatures drop. That's why it's key to keep an eye out for other types of submerged structure where panfish might be hiding out. And finally, don't forget that as water temperatures continue to drop throughout the fall, panfish will keep moving deeper. So don't be afraid to explore a bit and try fishing at different depths until you find where the fish are biting. So remember, in the fall, panfish love their deep, structured hideouts. By understanding these seasonal changes, you'll be well on your way to reeling in a great catch this fall season. Now that we know where to find our finned friends, let's discuss the best gear to catch them. To begin, consider using an ultralight rod and reel. This lightweight setup allows you to detect even the slightest nibbles, ensuring you don't miss a potential catch. Next, let's talk about fishing line. A light line, around 2 to 6 pound test, is ideal. This is because panfish have excellent eyesight, and the thinner the line, the less likely they are to be spooked by it. Now onto the exciting part. Bait. Small jigs, live worms, or crickets are all excellent choices. These baits mimic the small insects and creatures that panfish naturally feed on, making them irresistible to our quarry. During fall, the water clarity can vary. Sometimes it's clear, occasionally it's murky. To make sure your bait stands out in any water condition, opt for bright colors. Chartreuse or orange baits have proven to be particularly effective at attracting panfish, regardless of the water's clarity. Remember, the key to fall pan fishing is adaptability. The temperature is dropping and the fish are moving to different depths. Your gear needs to be able to handle these changes. That's why an ultra-light setup with light line is so beneficial. It allows you to easily adjust your fishing approach based on the conditions. Finally, don't forget your tackle box. Fill it with a variety of small jigs, brightly colored baits, and live bait. This way you're prepared for any situation. If one bait isn't working, don't be afraid to switch it up. Sometimes a simple change can make all the difference. Equipped with the right gear and bait, you're set for a successful fall fishing adventure. Remember, the key is to stay adaptable and patient. With these tools and tips, you're well on your way to reeling in a hefty fall catch. Happy fishing. Finding the perfect fishing spot is half the battle won. In the fall, panfish love to hang around natural structures that offer cover, warmth, and a buffet of food. Weed beds are a great place to start. As the sun shines down, these underwater gardens warm up, attracting a variety of panfish. Rocky shorelines are also worth exploring. The nooks and crannies between the rocks create an ideal habitat for smaller fish, making them a prime feeding ground for panfish. And let's not forget about docks. These man-made structures provide shade and shelter, creating a haven for panfish during sunny afternoons. Plus, they're usually situated in deeper water, which is where these fish tend to migrate as the temperature drops. So the next time you're out on the water, keep an eye out for these prime panfish spots. Catching panfish requires a bit of skill and the right technique. As fall sets in, the tactics you use during the summer might need a few tweaks to ensure you're getting bites. So, let's talk about some of the most effective methods for fall pan fishing. First up, vertical jigging. This technique is particularly successful when you're after crappie. They tend to congregate near structures like submerged logs or brush piles, and a well-placed jig can be irresistible. Remember to keep your movements slow and steady. Crappie aren't as aggressive in the cooler water, so a gentle jigging motion can be just the ticket to lure them in. Next, let's talk about bluegill. These panfish are suckers for live bait, making a float rig an excellent choice. The trick here is to adjust your depth. Bluegill might be hanging out closer to the bottom as the water cools, so play around with your bait's depth until you find where they're biting. But what if you want to cover more water? Then slow trolling small spinners or cranks along depth transitions might be the way to go. This method allows you to explore a larger area and find those fish hotspots. The key here, as with our other techniques, is to slow down. A leisurely pace can make your lure seem like an easy meal for a hungry panfish. And remember, fishing is as much an art as it is a science. Don't be afraid to try different techniques, lures and baits until you find what works best. Every day on the water is different, so be adaptable and patient. Master these techniques and you're sure to have a bountiful fall fishing season. So grab your gear, hit the water and enjoy the crisp autumn air and the thrill of the catch. After all, isn't that what fishing is all about? Knowing when to fish is just as important as knowing where. Panfish, including bluegill, crappie and sunfish, are most active during two key periods of the day. The early morning, just as the sun is peeking over the horizon, is a prime time. This is when panfish are out and about, searching for their first meal of the day. The second peak of activity comes in the late afternoon. As the sun starts to dip, panfish once again go on the hunt, making it an excellent time to cast your line and reel in a great catch. But don't overlook those overcast, cloudy days. These can actually extend the feeding window for panfish. So even if the sun isn't shining, don't hesitate to grab your gear and head out to the lake. So early bird or sunset lover both have their rewards in fall pan fishing. Let's reel in all the tips we've covered today. We kicked off by understanding the fall behavior of panfish like bluegill, crappie and sunfish. As the water temperatures drop, these fish transition to deeper waters. They often hang out near submerged structures such as brush piles and fallen logs or along steep drop-offs. Using a depth finder can be a game changer in locating these fish hotspots. Next up, we talked about the right gear and setup. An ultralight rod and reel provide maximum sensitivity, and a light line between 2 and 6 pound test helps avoid spooking the fish. For bait, small jigs, live worms or crickets are your best bet. Don't forget, in fall, bright colors like chartreuse or orange are particularly attractive to fish, regardless of whether the water is murky or clear. We also explored the best locations for fall pan fishing. Areas with natural cover like weed beds and rocky shorelines are hot spots, especially during sunny afternoons. Docks also tend to be a favorite as panfish often congregate in the shade under them. Then we dove into fall fishing techniques. The key here is to slow down your presentation. Vertical jigging near structures can be highly effective for crappie. For bluegill, a float rig with live bait can work wonders. Just adjust the depth until you find where they're biting. You can also slow troll small spinners or cranks along depth transitions to cover more water. Finally, we touched on the best times of day to fish. Early morning and late afternoon are when panfish are most active. Cloudy days can extend their feeding window, so don't miss out on those opportunities. Armed with these tips, you're ready to tackle the fall fishing season. Happy fishing